Good morning. This is Stephen Aquario of the New York Association of Counties, and I'd like to thank everybody for making time in what is a very busy time of year. Certainly any day across the state, there are many priorities facing the state and facing local governments, and we're very grateful that all of you, so many of you, have chosen to participate in this very important webinar on flood preparedness and response. Thank you again for making time and making this a priority. Flooding, nearly every county is represented today on this call, and I think it's because flooding has had a very profound impact on communities across New York. Over the past 10 years, just about every county has experienced a federal or state disaster declaration for flooding, and more than half have experienced 5 or more events. Under the leadership of Governor Andrew Cuomo, our state has done so much in response to flooding all across the state in both preparation and follow-up response. And government partnerships like we have today benefit local communities and the state as a whole. I'd like to personally thank our governor, who has personally visited every region that has been affected by flooding, and we're most grateful for his continued commitment. Today, we're joined by Governor Cuomo's Director of Emergency Management, Michael Kopy, and the Assistant Secretary for Intergovernmental Affairs, Molly Reilly, who'll talk about the state resources that are available to assist county leaders and homeowners in responding to and recovering from significant flooding events. We'll also hear from one of our own, the chairman of the Jefferson County Legislature, Scott Gray, about Jefferson County's flood response and the best practices that he recommends for other counties. Throughout the webinar, there's a box on your lower right on your screen where you could submit questions. We encourage you to submit questions from the beginning of the webinar all the way to the end of the webinar, and we'll try to get those questions answered, and we'll raise those questions with our presenters today. But one of the best parts of these types of formats are the questions, so that others can benefit from the things that are on your mind, the questions, comments, or concerns that you have. So please send them in, submit them, and we'll address them throughout the presentation. Before we begin, I'd like to thank the sponsor of today's webinar, TrapBag. TrapBag is a very low-cost, quick deploy, a cellular barrier capable of completely replacing sandbags for all natural or man-made disaster defense needs. Their barriers provide protection from natural disasters such as flash floods, beach erosion, storm surges, mudslides, levee breaching, and much, much more. I know they've been deployed in Florida numerous occasions and in New York State as well, and we're very grateful for TrapBag sponsorship. So right now, I'd like to turn it over to Director Michael Kopy. Mr. Colby was named the Director of Emergency Management by Governor Cuomo in January of 2019. Prior being named as the director, he served as a member of the New York State Police for 32 years in a number of command positions. Importantly, he's also been a member of the Village of Mamaroneck Fire Department since 1982. Thank you for joining us, Director Kopy.
Thanks, Steve, and I appreciate everybody taking the time to join us today. As you know, emergency management, response, preparedness are some of the most crucial functions of government. These processes sit at the intersection of the protection of the public, the environment, our institutions, the financial stability of the state, and each of your communities. As you said earlier, the governor has placed emergency management at the forefront of his tenure as extreme weather, flooding, severe storms, and other natural disasters are seemingly on the rise. It's why he brought me in a year ago to take charge of emergency management and oversee the state's response and planning efforts of the 29 state agencies tasked with emergency preparedness. I look forward to meeting each of you in February at the conference, and I'm going to make it a point to come out there. One of the things I wanted to talk about, and I've met a number of you out in the field, is what we're doing today to prepare for floods. As you know, we have 10 stockpiles across the state, geographically located, so that we can get resources to any of your communities within 1 hour of a request. We have pumps, we have hoses, we have generators, we have aqua dams. These are water barrier type products. We have a host of other items that we can bring to bear on a local problem. The key is to let us know. And the best way is through New York Responds, which the governor set up a few years ago to make sure requests were working their way through this system. We're also available personally. We have the regional commissioners who are in the field, and I'm hoping each of you are meeting with them to talk about problems you're having. The key thing here is communication, that we know through the county exactly what your problem is and what you need. Because whether we have it in the stockpile or not, the state is going to provide that service to you. So we like to just know ahead of time what you think, what you need, and we're going to be ready to go. I know there are going to be a lot of questions here today, so I don't want to take too much time here talking. So I'm going to turn it over to Molly right now.
Very good. So many thanks to the New York State Association for Counties for providing this forum to connect with leaders from around the state in order to discuss flooding. I'm happy to join with Director Kopy here and all of you. Director Kopy shared with you how Governor Cuomo has responded in real time to help communities experiencing disasters. And I'll build on those remarks to explain how Governor Cuomo is leading efforts to rebuild after the disasters. Two important examples of this leadership that come to mind are the establishments of the Governor's Office of Storm Recovery, which we call GOSER, that was created in 2013. And then more recently, the Lake Ontario Resiliency and Economic Development Initiative established this year, which we call READY, and for which I am the program manager. So a bit about GOSER. GOSER was established to address the damage caused by Hurricane Irene, Tropical Storm Lee, and Superstorm Sandy in counties across New York State. GOSER was tasked with addressing the community's most urgent needs while also identifying innovative and enduring solutions that would strengthen the infrastructure and the critical systems. It is operated under New York Rising and utilizes about $4.4 billion in flexible funding that was made available by the U.S. federal government under HUD in the Community Development Block Grant Disaster Recovery Program. And it concentrates aid to housing recovery, small business, community reconstruction, and infrastructure. That work is ongoing, and I find myself traveling to New York City from the Capitol to learn what it is that's happening with GOSER in order to stand up the READY initiative so that it will be a success and move with urgency, that is, the urgency we realize from the communities who are experiencing these disasters. So READY was established this year and is in a response to the extended pattern of flooding that happens along Lake Ontario and St. Lawrence River. The governor has committed $300 million of state funding to advance the READY goals, and which is to increase the resiliency of the shoreline and to bolster economic activity, specifically in Niagara, Orleans, Monroe, Wayne, Cayuga, and Oswego, and Jefferson and St. Lawrence counties. Since June of 2019, stakeholders in these READY regions have identified local priorities, at-risk infrastructure, and other assets to assist with solutions for public safety. In October of 2019, the READY Commission awarded grants that will be funding 133 recommended projects. The READY's work is ongoing, but a brief update that I wanted to provide to you about the advancement of activity within the READY program. And one of the things that's unique to the READY program is this full engagement of many state agencies to stand up the local project owners so that they can realize the good ideas which they had to solve the problems that they're aware of in their communities. And our state agencies continue engagement. Part of that engagement was to move forward with engineering on these projects. And I can report that 100% of the projects are committed to having engineering and design to at least 10% by mid-February of 2020, which is a great pace of advancing projects to their completion. We have looked to provide as much information as possible to our partners in the counties and in the other units of local government by providing webinars. We've had webinars related to environmental permitting and seeker, related to funding, related to the Lake Ontario Business Resiliency Program, and we've had hundreds of participants, quite likely that some of you were participants in those. And we are on the ground. Our state agencies, our permitting agents and authorities are on site working with local project owners to make sure that they have all of the tools necessary to advance their projects to completion, which is where I think all of these resiliency realities are going, right? With the examples that I've shared, we see the direct action taken by the governor, but I want to impress upon you that we have state programs that are available that will help to inform localities about how they can build their resilient future with changes of law, improvements to zoning, and notably Department of State and the Department of Environmental Conservation are sponsoring those programs. So I encourage you to reach out to find resources online, to work with organizations like NISAC or NICOM, and to directly connect with your partners and state agencies to learn more about those programs, because we realize that while we respond to incidents very well, you know, Director Kopy is there in the field with the governor to make sure that we have solutions. While we have state funding programs like GOZER and READY, it's also the case that we need to think about the long term. What do we do at the local level to help make sure that we are in a safer place for what unfortunately is the new normal?
Molly, I'd like to thank you. This is Stephen Aquario. Again, we're listening to Director Michael Kopy, the Director of Emergency Management, and Molly Reilly, the Governor's Assistant Secretary for Intergovernmental Relations and the Resiliency and Economic Development Initiative Program Manager. Molly has certainly hit the ground running, coordinating the state's efforts to address flooding. She's worked very closely with local governments and is your connection to the governor's office and for state resources, again, to address flooding. And we're very grateful to hear both presentations this morning. If individuals have questions, again, please submit these questions so that we could address them after we've concluded some initial opening remarks by the state officials. At this point in time, let's go to Scott Gray. Scott was elected to the Board of Legislators, a body of 15 in Jefferson County in 2002. So he is a very seasoned county legislator and has served as the chairman of this board since 2016. Scott will talk about flood response efforts in Jefferson County, which has many, many miles of waterfront, and offer his perspective for other counties who are confronted with flooding. Of course, the Great Lake, Ontario, which feeds the magnificent St. Lawrence River, has over the past several years experienced tremendous flooding affecting tourism, businesses, marinas, residences, quality of life, and of course the economy for both the state of New York and the local communities in and around Lake Ontario and the St. Lawrence Seaway. So Scott, we are very pleased that you're with us here today to share your perspective.
Thank you very much, Stephen. I appreciate it. And let me just take a moment to thank NISAC for putting on this presentation. Director Aquario, also I'd like to thank for joining with us this morning because in their busy schedules, Director of Emergency Management Mike Kopy and Assistant Secretary of Intergovernmental Affairs Molly Reilly, whom I worked with up in Jefferson County initially on the couple of different instances of flooding. So, and I'll echo Director Kopy's thoughts when he said communication is key, because that is critical. That is critical to addressing the needs. It's critical to cooperation with all the levels of government and the agencies that are going to be involved in responding to the situation. And there are people that are coming from a lot of different directions. So first would be the initial response, and that is you're going to want to get some coordination of that communication, and that is going to be, that's what I commonly refer to as either you're going to maintain your sanity or you're going to lose your sanity, and it's going to come down to coordination and communication. You've got to know everybody that's involved. That starts with the right from the local, either the DPWs of towns or villages, highway departments, supervisors, mayors, and county legislators. And then in the other direction, it goes up to the state level, and you're going to want to make sure that you have a clear flow of communication. And in Jefferson County, what we did during this we've had 2 bouts of high water events that have affected our communities. And we have a very unique situation because we have the lake and a portion of our county, Lake Ontario, and then we have the St. Lawrence River, which are two different acting bodies of water. So we have very unique situations. But we collected all the data of everybody that was involved. We deployed the legislators in the various districts and made sure that they were in communication with the mayors, with the supervisors, with their local highway departments and DPWs and stuff. And they were really the boots on the ground, and they were giving us the feedback on a daily basis of what was occurring. And then as far as my role went, we collected all that information from them basically on a daily basis. I communicated with our emergency management director. I communicated with the state folks several times with Director Kopy and the various agencies. And for our strategy, and not only in dealing with what the conditions were, and then how we're going to deal with those conditions. It's important that you communicate frequently with the public, whether it's through media releases. In our case, there was plenty of media coverage over the events, and so we were able to communicate either through press releases or through various interviews what the conditions were of our lake and river waterfront areas. We, in this case, did declare a state of emergency, and we had to, as part of the state of emergency, we had to put in in the body of the state of emergency, we put in a no-wake zone. We did not do an emergency order. There's a difference between including something in your state of emergency and then doing emergency order as part of the state of emergency. So we did a no-wake zone, which required us, in that case, we had to communicate with law enforcement. We have several agencies that are along the lake and the river. Our sheriff's department has patrol boats. A lot of times the DOT was very helpful as their roadside signs, electronic roadside signs, were able to communicate what our status was. So we had a different no-wake zone in the lake, and then we had an entirely separate distance in the river. So that was critical. Basically, we go through and we get assessments on a daily basis, and people call people call in, and like I said, they would, if there was needs, we would have people communicate with our emergency management office through the state emergency management office emergency management. We would send state representatives out, we would do assessments of various areas and what the needs were. That was kind of a triaging of the particular areas and what resources were going to be needed to be put out there. And then you just have to know what resources are available. And there will be no shortage. And I'll give a lot of credit to Governor Cuomo because it starts, the attitude of service to the public starts with him, and it's carried through to the various departments. And they're very responsive at the state level. And that carries right through to our local levels. Our highway department's responsive, our sheriff's department's responsive, our emergency management department is responsive, and everybody is on point. And then we filters down to the town and the village level. So you have to tap all those resources. In our case, the emergency management office coordinated the assessments. And as you heard Director Kopy say, the New York responds. We would put tickets in, we would go out, we would figure out what the needs were. And then our local highway department was responding to road conditions if we needed to, if roads were flooded or debris was coming over the roads. And of course, we had local fire and emergency services. They're invaluable during these periods of time. And a lot of those folks are volunteers, so it's a lot is expected of them, and they deliver every time. And it's difficult to expect people that work every day and they come home and they would just come back out and start helping their neighbors, and that's at the heart of what they do. So, and then we have the Office of Emergency Management as well as the state Director Murphy. So DOT was very instrumental, and National Guard is always seemed to be at the ready if the condition warrants it. So, and then we had our first time in 2017, when we first experienced it. It was a matter of obtaining equipment from the state. We had sandbagging machines centrally located. We had to get volunteers to fill sandbags, and it was a round-the-clock process. We also, in this case, we were able to get New York State docks with a local prison to help us in that regard too. We kind of refined the situation the second time. The state did a lot of that work, and a lot of the sandbagging operation was handled through the DOT, and were deployed right from the local DOT barn out to the various municipalities as they needed them. And then the municipalities would deploy them, and the National Guard would deploy them. State Fire was out. They would deploy all the resources, whatever the needs were. In some cases, aqua dams became more valuable to us than sandbagging operations, and so there's a variety of sources out there. But it really comes down to coordinating your efforts and making sure that everybody understands their role and you have a clear lines of communications. It's from the county, it's outward to the towns and to the villages, to the legislators in their districts, and then it pivots in the other direction, upward to the state and to all the resources that are available to help us there. So with that, I will conclude my remarks.
Chairman
Yes.
Gray, thank you very much for sharing your perspective and more importantly, your experience. Let's go back to Director Kopy for a few follow-up comments. We also have a series of questions that have come in. So if you do have questions, now would be a good time to be submitting those questions, and we can have our officials answer those questions. So let's go back to Director Kopy, and then we'll take some questions.
I'll be quick here, but just what the chairman said in terms of planning, I wanted to let at least the 8 counties know on Lake Ontario, something that we're working on now. We're going to roll out right after the first of the year, because we know this is going to happen again in the lake this year. The levels are already high, and they're projected to be as high as they've ever been as we get into the spring. The state right now, the Office of Emergency Management, is mapping each of the 8 counties Last time we responded to over 2,200 individual parcels. We're mapping them and putting the data in as to exactly when those parcels will flood at what lake level, including what actions we took to prevent the flooding. So whether it was water barrier product, sandbags, and who did it with all of the notes there. So hopefully this will streamline our operation this year. Second, with regards to sandbags, last year we made well over 1 million bags, and this year we're already beginning the planning process to where we're going to do that. We felt that that went well and lifted a bit of the burden off the community. So I want to assure you that we will continue that process. If you want to make sandbags, certainly we can get you the resources and the equipment, the bags, the machines. But if you would rather defer to us, we will have people who will be providing that also. And then just outside of Lake Ontario, you know, we're talking about the lake today. We're talking about everything that happened there, but we started an ice jam task force. We're currently tracking 150 rivers, streams, and creeks throughout the state that have historically had problems and created flooding conditions. So if you have a stream or a creek or river that is a problem, please reach out to your local commissioner for emergency management or contact me directly. I'm always available to take calls so we can add it to the list. And if we have it on the list, we want to let you know what we're doing to track this and what we think might be necessary during the winter. So I'll turn it back over to you, and you know, I'm certainly available for any questions.
Okay, Director Kopy, thanks so much. You know, one of the first questions that we have come in here, can you discuss some of the plans that you might have for impacted areas along Lake Erie, and then reinforce the process for requesting assistance? It might be equipment and or financial assistance, local to county to state. So that's the question that's coming in from Western New York.
What we're doing in Western New York is the same we're doing on Lake Ontario. We're preparing for that to flood over. We've had some communities out there in the past that have flooded. We have pumps, we have generators, and we have personnel who are available to go out there. The process there for requesting is, as always, contact New York Responds. And when I say contact New York Responds, I don't want that to seem as if that's the only way to do it. You know, what I would prefer is, when time permits, is that there's personal contact with the regional commissioners, with our people there in the field, to go over these problems so that they have some firsthand awareness of this. From a hiring point of view, we're currently hiring a new regional commissioner. I believe that person will be in place by the end of the week, and they will be out there introducing themselves to you. So key thing is, let us know and then get the request into New York Response.
Okay, Director, thank you. The next question that we have, you know, if we recall back in October, we had a very severe flash flood in central New York, Mohawk Valley, Herkimer, 7 inches of rain in a few hours. We had a fatality in that storm with washouts, and subsequently a request by the governor to the federal government for federal declarations of disasters. This question is, how can counties, is there a process that counties can use to assist the state when it is applying for a declaration of a disaster? How can we be best positioned to assist the state in seeking a federal declaration to support our governor?
Well, the key thing is, with the time frame to get these submitted, is to have personnel available in the county and at the community level who can get us there to conduct the assessments as quickly as possible. Right after the flooding on Halloween night into the next day, we had people preparing to do that, and we were able to get the forms completed and filled out within the time frame. So the best thing that can be done for us is to have people pre-identified, ready to go. And, you know, our people will work pretty much around the clock on this process because it's time sensitive. So that's the most important thing. In terms of the Halloween storm, that worked. Everybody was ready to go, and we were able to get it done quickly. So I appreciate that.
Okay. Thanks, Director. For Ms. Reilly, a question here is regarding homeowners. Who should homeowners contact for information about ready funding, the program itself? Is there a separate channel from government to government, intergovernmental? Is there a separate portal or a separate web page where the counties can direct the homeowners?
Thanks for the question. The Lake Ontario Homeowners Assistance Program is being facilitated by New York State Home and Community Renewals, which can be found online at hcr.ny.gov. Through that access point, you can be connected directly with New York State agency personnel who can connect the homeowners with the proper nonprofit entity that is facilitating the assistance program on the ground. So we have 4 nonprofits that are facilitating application, site visits, review of engineering, review of concerns that were presented by the homeowner applicant in order to get them the assistance that they need to recover. So the first point of contact, HCR, and then we will get it to the proper nonprofit that is facilitating in the region, and then directly connect with the personnel at the nonprofit that are facilitating for New York State. But again, you know, Director Kopy is right on when he said if you're not getting the answers where you're turning, come to us, and we will get you the answers. We will get it to the people who need to get it. So we welcome that. But please also note the HCR program for Lake Ontario did receive applications from primary residences prior to October 31. On October 31, that application closed. On December 10th, the secondary homeowners program applications closed. It's now in a process where we're doing a review of all of the submissions to verify damages and to assist the applicants to make sure that they had a full scope of work so that they can get the assistance that they actually need to have a healthy and safe home.
Hey, Molly, thank you.
May I interject real quick?
Yeah, please, go ahead.
Molly, perhaps you would like to cover the business side of that too, the part of the READY program too. So if somebody has, it sounds like somebody has inquiries about private residences, if they have inquiries from businesses as well.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Chairman. The New York State Empire State Development is facilitating the Lake Ontario Business Resiliency Program. That program is receiving applications currently from businesses that are looking to build resilient structures to help themselves endure and sustain and be profitable future going. The applications for those projects are being received now, and you can visit esd.ny.gov as a first stop to find information. The intake form and application can be found there. The applications close on January 31, 2020, and in the process of review, not only will Empire State Development make sure that the application is complete, but we are, again, a multi-agency initiative. We're partnering with our colleagues in Department of State and Department of Environmental Conservation to make sure that the solutions that are presented are both reasonable and, you know, that all of the full scope of work is considered by the project owner before they, you know, spend any dollars and get underway. Speaking of spending of dollars, in both of these instances, we have dates whereby we are allowing for submission for damages that happened prior to, you know, the date of application. So on the websites you'll find, you know, for example, the Business Resiliency Program is fordated back to, you know, I believe it's January 1 of 2019. So if the business said we have a condition and a problem in May and spent dollars, that they might be able to put forward that application now for essentially a reimbursement of funds already expended.
Okay, Molly, thank you, and thank you, Chairman Gray, for including that follow-up. Molly or Director Kopy, do the counties have regional reps that you want them, local governments, to contact initially for additional information, or should they be contacting Mr. Kopy or Ms. Reilly directly? What's the process that you wish to communicate for initial contact?
Thanks for that. That's great. So in understanding the network of the governor's teams that are out in the field, for the Intergovernmental Affairs, there's an entire team of regional representatives around the state who are there to be the first line of contact for all local electeds, and they certainly know how to make the connections and move information along a chain to get to the local official to the place where they need to be to get information. So in the Intergovernmental Affairs, many of you are already aware of the governor's regional reps who are out in the field, but also in each of the portfolios that we have. For Empire State Development, we have regional directors across the state who you engage with all the time, who can be a first point of information regarding the ESD business resiliency programs. We have HCR that's deployed across the state. We have also, in the emergency management mechanism, there are regional directors across the state who we know have a regional perspective and context that will help to really make very clear what the needs of the community are at the ground level. And so please always reach out to the folks who understand it best first. And then if, you know, like we say, if you're not getting the answers that you need there, certainly we welcome everyone to push it up the chain, but start with your regional points of contact.
Okay. Thank you very much. The next question is, again, from Western New York, talking about, is there also a plan to advance the homeowners assistance program to Lake Erie region?
Right now, the money that is identified for the Lake Ontario Ready Initiative is, at this time, defined as a program for Lake Ontario and St. Lawrence River. Should it be the case that needs are there and we want to build out the program, we'll build it out, or it might be a new program. But I think what is clear is the governor is absolutely committed and is a good partner with counties and continues to mobilize resources and engage communities with the full force of the New York State family to support you. So I will follow on to see, you know, if there's a program forthgoing, we'll get the information to you directly.
Okay. Another comment, more than a question, is, or it's sort of a question. Can we want like a one-pager to talk about some of the deadlines that were discussed on today's call? Maybe Alexandra from our office can contact Molly, you directly, and we can sort of put out a one-pager with some of the deadlines and websites and emails that we spoke about today.
Yes, and I will absolutely fold the NISAC team into that communication. Just so that you're aware, my office is actually putting out some communication that's exactly that today. So we will be contacting people within the next 24 hours with some useful tools to help direct them to where they need to go.
Okay, terrific, because that was another question here, is how can county leaders stay on top of announcements related to funding and other programs and resources? So we can check that one off with that answer. Okay, terrific. I guess the last question we'll give to the chairman, Chairman Gray. In your experience, do you see the role of intermunicipal, inter-county shared services, the relationship amongst the towns, villages, cities, and the county, your experiences in mobilizing the various public works, emergency management functions, law enforcement, emergency management issues amongst the local governments? Do you see any opportunities here related to intermunicipal or shared services?
Well, it's it's critical that we work together, and a lot of cases, there's got to be overlap in your highway departments, whether they're town highway departments, whether they're county highway departments. There's going to be overlap there. So, yeah, there has to be significant streamlined approach to all of this to make it as easy for the public as possible and as seamless as possible. So there's plenty of opportunities out there. Yes, to work with the different agencies and different levels of government. I should also add that what's critical in this also would be the demobilization of all of this. You're deploying a lot of material into communities, and the aqua dams and the sandbags. Sandbags have to be dealt with. They can be a hazard in the waterways if they're not dealt with properly. So you have to have a plan and expectations for demobilization for all of that material as well. But yeah, there's plenty. It has to be a coordinated effort, or the public's going to get lost in the direction that all of this is moving in.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. Just an observation here. County emergency managers should be the first point of contact for the local elected officials. Of course, this is a reminder, I guess, to each other from across the state. The county emergency management officers should be the first point of contact for the local elected officials. And then these county emergency managers can interact regionally with the state coordinators from OEM on behalf of the elected officials. Molly and Michael, just want to make sure that that's the protocol. I believe it is the protocol myself, that would be the proper protocol to follow, and should elected officials need to follow up if there's some inaction perhaps in that chain of command, then that would be the further role of local elected officials. So just want a reminder to everyone, if that's what you concur with, that's the process.
Yeah, I think we do concur. I think, on the ground, coordinate, communicate. Communication has to be key. Director Kopy, I think, made that point very clear, that the better the channel of communication, the better the ability to respond. And yes, with the county emergency response, to the state entities, and then, of course, elevate as necessary to get the need. The reality is we're talking about emergencies here, so people need the help yesterday. So we need to, be responsive, and keeping those lines of communication open gets that done.
And if I can just add one thing as a follow-up to a previous question with regards to what can the counties do to assist the state during these disasters, not only having people available for the assessments, but letting us know as soon as possible that you may think that you have a problem there, or something that needs to be assessed, or something that needs assistance from the state, whether it's trucks to remove debris, things to be brought out of the rivers. Never feel as if we're too busy because another community has been impacted possibly worse than yours. There are 200,000 employees in the state. The governor wants them all brought to bear on local problems. And so one of the things we found after the Halloween storm was that people felt that other areas which had gotten hit harder, that maybe they were tying up all the resources. We were bringing resources in from other parts of the state that hadn't been hit. So please let us know on a timely basis. And then with regards to resources, if we don't have a pump or a piece of equipment necessarily in stock, we'll get it for you. And I just want to reiterate that we understand that municipalities and many of the counties can't afford to keep some of this specialized equipment on hand. So when there's a problem, let the regional commissioner know through the county, right, through New York Response, put that request in, and then we will do everything possible to get that resource to your community as soon as possible.
And now I will just follow up with Mike, or with Commissioner Kopy, also Director Kopy. I mean, that is absolutely critical. I mean, your emergency management office is your professional office for handling these situations. So they are the ones that are trained in handling that. They are the ones that are trained in the New York Response. They're the ones that work with the state OEM folks, and it is basically, a job of an elected official to make sure that everything is flowing properly. That there's, if something is needed, if there's an appeal that needs to be made to the state, then that's generally what we took up. The Director Kopy and I were on the ground several times throughout the region on probably a weekly basis and assessing what was going on and just monitoring and making sure that that people were being responsive and we were taking care of what the needs were in those communities and make sure everything was just operating correctly.
Okay, Chairman. Last question, promise. And then let's have some closing comments from Director Kopy and Secretary Reilly. I guess this one might be for Secretary Reilly. Any new updates from the 2014 plan for Lake Ontario? Anything that you want to report? What's happening with the International Joint Commission? Any updates to that 2014 plan that might be available for comment now?
Certainly. So as many people are aware, the governor announced in October suit against the International Joint Commission for failure to properly manage the water levels relative to Plan 2014. The governor has stayed the course to say that, the IJC needs to carry out its responsibilities to protect the health of the lake, but also the reality of the fact that people are lakeshore residents and that they need to be part of the conversation and we need to protect them as well. The governor announced on November 20th that the local municipalities could take action to sign on or be part of, in some way, the suit. Working with our friends at NISAC and NICOM and with the General Counselor for the Department of Environmental Conservation, Tom Berkman, and the Director of the Bureau of Environmental Protection through the Attorney General's Office, Lem Sholovic, and I think I mispronounced that. Nonetheless, we are engaging. There have been conference calls, there have been meetings to connect with local officials and to hear where we have local officials who can substantiate damages relative to the concerns so that we can add on to the argument which we are making, which is that the IJC needs to be a proper steward of the lake levels relative to the fact that there are existent communities on the shore. So that is what's going on right now, that engagement. And if there are folks who were interested to be contacted who have not been contacted, please know that you're in the queue and that we are working on a one-on-one engagement so that we have a proper understanding of each municipality's unique conditions and that we have inventoried and indexed it properly.
Okay, I want to thank our speakers today, Michael Kopy, the Director of Emergency Management, Office of the Governor, Molly Reilly, the Assistant Secretary for Intergovernmental Affairs, and Chairman Scott Gray, the Chairman of the Jefferson County Legislature. If there's any other closing comments, we'll go to you, Director Kopy, and then Ms. Reilly and Chairman Gray, and then we'll wrap things up. So, Michael.
Sure, and I know we focused a lot here on Lake Ontario, and we also talked about the Halloween flooding. But look, flooding happens anywhere in the state. We're currently working on problems that are occurring in Suffolk County with ocean flooding and dune replacement. We've had floodings in the Sound Shore. I personally worked on some of those years ago. Flooding happens anywhere in the state. And so even though we're focusing on those two events, please make sure we're aware of any other flooding concerns you have and never feel as if we're too busy. We have resources and we can bring them to bear. So I'll turn it over to Molly.
Absolutely. I concur with Director Kopy's comments there that we recognize that this is a statewide reality and the governor is absolutely committed to assisting all New Yorkers and to respond to the incidents that they experience, but also is committed to making plans so that the incidents are less impactful because the communities are hardened with better infrastructure, better protections, and better planning so that they might be able to be resilient long term. So I encourage everybody to visit agencies' websites to find more ways, for example, through the Department of State and the Department of Environmental Conservation, to see all of the recommended legislation as well as programs that they have in place to assist counties with planning so that they might be able to have less impact when these unfortunate storms do happen.
Scott Gray.
Yes. First of all, thank you for organizing this today. And I'd just like to echo we're putting the lake, so to speak, to bed for the winter, much higher than it has been in the past. So we fully anticipate that we're going to be addressing this situation again next year. Letting the water out through the Robert Moses Dam is a very complicated procedure in terms of making ice, and I mean they literally have to make an ice cover, and it's complex. We have been in numerous conversations with the River Regulating Board, and there's, you know, even if they opened up the dam wide open, it would just take inches off, and it's not really going to. There's a lot behind it. There's a lot of water coming from behind it. There's a lot of precipitation occurring. So we are anticipating this very same situation, unfortunately, next year, and you know, plan accordingly. It is, you know, Director Kopy stated it best. The state has resources, and the state will deploy those resources. And as Molly said, you know, the family of New York State agencies are at the ready to help you folks, and they are. You have to be coordinated with all levels. The county has to be the streamline in order to facilitate everything that's going to happen at the town and village level, and they have to be prepared. Your point office is your emergency management office, and that's where everything is going to occur. So put your plan in place, and get ready for next year.
Okay, I want to thank everybody again. The association will hold a chief elected certification program on January 29th, along with the Office of Emergency Management and Homeland Security during the NISAC conference in January. And I want to thank everyone for making time today, and certainly, again, credit and thank our Governor, Andrew Cuomo, for setting the leadership tone for everyone involved. And it's truly a public service at all levels of government to help safeguard the people and our state. So thank you all for joining us, and have a wonderful holiday season and new year. Thank you.